amazed how little attention the media has given to a new report on global warming I mentioned last week. I'm not that surprised, to be honest. I mean, I've seen how the media ignores proof that the warming scare is grossly exaggerated. But I think you deserve to know more about this report. In the United States, Chris Wright, who's the brilliant gas tycoon who now leads the US Department of Energy, he hired 5 very prominent climate experts to report back to the government on what the climate was really.
What are the experts in? What are their degrees? You ever notice that things like that are never mentioned? Isn't that funny?
Really doing, and whether we could trust predictions by the most popular climate models that we're facing dangerous warming of at least 3 degrees this century, and we're already copping all sorts of climate.
But I thought it's 1.5. Where do the 3 all of a sudden come from? Are you telling me that they literally say that the old climate, diagrams, the studies, their prognosis were all wrong? Number one, they were all wrong. But number two, do they now actually acknowledge that? And if so, why would we believe them right now? If everything before was wrong, why would we believe that they're right now? Why would we believe that?
Disasters. Well, the author's conclusion was that the climate models are actually unreliable. They're all over the shop. They predict probably 1 degree more warming than is likely, and we aren't getting many of the predicted climate disasters.
Do you remember before Obama was president, he was, I think, the mayor of New Orleans. I think that's his position back then, and I think it was 2012. No, before that. When New Orleans got hit by a hurricane category, I think 5, and the entire city was flooded, and it was a disaster. Back then, after that, all those global warming people said that hurricanes of that strength would be the norm in the future, and there will be way more hurricanes in general, and of course, even stronger ones. What happened? Absolutely nothing. Like literally, absolutely nothing happened. And the same is with all those, in the future we will have way more floods, and they will be way worse. And then, a couple of years we had a flood, a really bad one in Germany, and it's climate change. And turned out, no, it's not climate change. It was all literally human mistake, because one dumb woman was more worried about her posts on Instagram than doing her job. A dam broke because it rained so much that, well, there was too much water, and then the dam broke. They could have just released more water beforehand, because they knew that all the rain was coming, but they didn't. And then the dam broke, and a lot of people died. A lot of area got flooded. Interesting thing, only the areas got flooded that were the actual flood areas of the river. So people built houses in flood area of a river. And now everyone is complaining that, oh, it got flooded. Of course it got flooded. It's a flood area. Why are you building in a flood area? Now, they built there because they were allowed to build there. They didn't know. Now the people in the city, they knew. They didn't care. And that's why it happened. It's not that there are more floods. Number one, there aren't. It's not that they are stronger. They aren't. We always had floods. I mean, literally, look at history books and read about Egypt. Egypt was so great because of the yearly flooding of the Nile that fertilized the fields. The Egyptians relied on the Nile to flood every year. So floods happened all the time. In the past, it happens now, it happens in the future. It will always happen. Just like droughts happened in the past, happened now, happens in the future. Will always happen. That's just part of nature. It's just normal. You either can now, cry about it and say, oh, it's human made, or you can go, okay, we know these things happened in the past, they happen now, they will happen in the future, so we prepare for it to happen again, which you can. It's not hard. We did it in the past. We do it right now. But some people in some areas. Not in Germany because that would be called a conspiracy theorist. But yeah, things happen all the time. And that's also a thing, especially in Germany. People getting their houses flooded because they are built in flood areas. And I can guarantee you that is happening everywhere in the world, but especially in Western countries, because people there are, more retarded when it comes to dealing with nature, because they are so far away from nature. Yes, I said that this way, very especially city people. They have no clue. That's why everyone here believes that the forest in Germany is dying. It's not. It's, as far as I can tell, one kind of tree that is dying, and that's because of one insect. And they are, they are dying. Well, the trees are dying because they are getting eaten by the insects. And that happens periodically. Every 30 years, these trees are dying in Germany. That's normal. Happened in the past, like all the time. Happens now. Will happen in the future. But they are saying that, oh, it's climate change. It's not. It's just the life cycle, which they would understand if they would know what they are talking about. But they don't.
Global warming also has benefits that are often ignored, especially a big increase in trees and crops that we've been seeing, a greening of the planet.
Oh, who could have guessed? By the way, that's literally happening in the Sahara Desert. Oh, who could have guessed that CO2, the thing that plants need to breathe. Have you ever heard of photosynthesis? Yeah, they need CO2 for that. The more you know. By the way, that's fifth grade biology.
And in this report, the authors sum it all up like this. Models, the climate models, and experience suggest that carbon dioxide-induced warming may be less damaging economically than commonly believed. And excessively aggressive mitigation policies, you might include our own net zero schemes, could prove more detrimental than beneficial.
Like in Germany. Very, very important thing here, actually, in Germany. We put basically styrofoam on the buildings for so you don't need to heat that much, and so that stuff doesn't get overrun by not parasites, insects. You impregnate them with parasites, which gets washed out when rainwater hits the thing, and then goes into the ground and the groundwater and into the rivers and everywhere, and there kills off the life. That's why there are so many how would I call it, pesticides in German waterways. It's not because of the farmers. It's not the farmers that put that there. It's the construction industry. It's the we have to save the climate people that put it there. Which they of course don't know, because you can't say that openly, because that's a conspiracy theory.
So you can understand why the authors have since been absolutely trashed for daring to doubt the climate scare and upsetting the climate industry. They've been called all sorts of names, painted as fools, frauds, Donald Trump toadies, even Stalin.
Scientists decry Trump energy chief's plan to update climate reports. Exactly what Stalin did. Funny. You know what's also funny? About 18 months ago, there was a letter released by and signed by 1,200 climate scientists that fundamentally say man-made climate change doesn't exist. Have you ever heard about that letter in the media? No. I wonder why.
Would you believe? But don't be fooled by the abuse, because the 5 authors are in fact very prominent experts. Professor Emerita Judith Curry, who's published 192 peer-reviewed papers on the climate. Dr. Roy Spencer, NASA senior scientist who runs probably the most accurate measure of world temperature. Professor Ross McKittrick, an expert reviewer of the last 3 reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And distinguished Professor John Christie, a former lead author of an IPCC report. I mean, these are very serious people. Plus, Stephen Koonin is a physicist and former Undersecretary for Science for President Barack Obama, a Democrat.
Who could have guessed?
And I am joined by Stephen Koonin. Steve Koonin, thank you so much for your time. Why did you and the other 4 experts behind this report actually agree to do it when you must have known the climate industry and the media, they would really go for you?
Indeed. But, we are all 5 of us scientists who have long felt that the science was misrepresented to the public and the decision makers. And we wanted to do our best to set.
It's not that the science is misrepresented to the decision makers. The decision makers tell the scientists what to say. Well, the decision makers way, way up, not the small governments. They don't have no say. They have no power compared to, the people with the actual power, the people with the money.
The record straight.
Well, your report agrees on many points with what I'll call the consensus, the alarmist position perhaps, the position of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. You say, yes, global warming is real. Yes, it's a problem. Yes, it's caused in part by humans. Now tell us where you disagree with this consensus.
Well, 95% of our report, people have said, agrees with or is taken right out of the IPCC. It's just that there are aspects of what the consensus says that do not find their way to the public. For example, there are no detectable trends in the great majority of extreme weather types.
Who could have guessed?
The models that we use to project climates into the future are demonstrably deficient. They're in many ways all over the place in terms.
I heard about that about the year. In the early 2000s, I heard that. Like that all the climate models back then that were made were all wrong. And that was 20 years ago.
In terms of what they project. And the projected impacts of future climate change, even using those deficient models, are minimal. And these are very important central points that are there in the report, but do not make their way to the public discussion.
You actually point out that the models tend to run hot, as in predict more warming than we've had. They're unreliable. A number are basing on false assumptions of how much emissions we're going to get. You actually predict almost the 1 degree less warming over the century than the IPCC model consensus. How important is that?
Well, to be clear, we don't predict. We simply cite and assess the work of others. But certainly if the warming is a degree less than what the IPCC consensus says, that's a big deal.
And what about the climate disasters? I mean, every time, we've got it right now, we've got some algae blooming off the South Australian coast. Global warming, we get heavy rain, global warming, we get a drought, global warming.
Yeah, and all these things you had in the past. Like all the time. It's nothing special. Which is what you would knew if you would at least be somewhat interested in it and educate yourself. Just like, I don't know, watch a documentary. There are plenty of documentaries about climate change, nature, whatever, that show you, yeah, these things are normal. because they're happening all the time. And they happened in the past all the time. They happened before humans even existed. Imagine that.
How much influence has man-made warming really had from the work that you've done in this report? How much has it really influenced the natural disasters we tend to see?
Yeah, we have a very short memory for weather disasters. There's a lovely example we turned up having to do with the floods in Texas that we saw at the beginning of July that were a terrible tragedy. But if you look back in the records, you can find the same kind of event happening in the same place in 1900. And of course,
Who could have guessed?
human influences on the climate were much smaller in 1900. And so you have a very hard time logically attributing the recent disaster to carbon dioxide. The same is true for many other severe weather phenomena. They happen in the past. They're just relatively rare, and so we get surprised when we see them happen in the present day.
Told you. Just like a volcanic eruption. A volcano can be sleeping for hundreds of years, thousands even, and then it breaks out. People will be surprised by it because, oh my god, when was the last time that happened? 5,000 years ago. Oh. Oops. But why now? Ooh. It just happened. That's just nature.
Yeah, I noticed, for instance, in your report, you say the number of heat waves in America actually peaked nearly 100 years ago. The number of...
This is so stupid. Really? This is literally funny.
Heat waves that were striking America at the time, and what we see now, all right, is much less.
Wait, heat wave index? Oh. Now, I wonder what the index is telling me. Is that the degree over... is this the degrees over average temperature? Or what does that tell me? Because I have no idea. Or is there days inside of a heat wave? I don't know. Per year, I would guess.
The damning thing about the heat waves is that we really don't understand why the 30s was so much warmer than it was in many subsequent decades. And that speaks to our rather poor understanding of the way in which the climate varies.
Now, your report, I think what the real thing that's annoying so many people in the climate industry is this. You say the warming will be less than what most people are claiming. You say the disasters from the warming we've seen are basically exaggerated. They're not that many that you can point to. And the attempts we make to stop all this are very expensive. And, well, do they really work? The takeout here, isn't it, that it might not actually be worth trying to stop what isn't the disaster, the climate disaster that many claim.
Absolutely. In deciding what to do, we have to balance the hazards, the certainties and uncertainties in the changing climate against other considerations like the world needs more and more energy. And deciding what to do, you have to look at the costs. Are they going to be effective? What about equity between generations, between countries, and so on? It's not simply that, oh my God, we've broken the climate and we've got to fix it. And I think people get annoyed when we start to expose those nuances of the situation.
Oh, yes. So you've really offended in church.
Yeah, because if you look actually into it, all this man-made climate thing, that's literally a religious cult, because they behave like that. You can't talk to these people. Like literally, you can't, because they are so into what they believe, and everything you say, it's heresy. These people are literally insane.
Of course, you also stress what's undeniably true, the greening of the planet is actually a benefit of extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. More trees, more plants, more food.
Yes.
Agricultural yields have, in fact, doubled over the last 60 years or so. And a good fraction of that, NASA says 75%, is attributable to higher carbon dioxide levels. You know, if you look inside a hothouse, we put the carbon dioxide levels typically up to about 1,200 parts per million, which is just about 3 times what you find in the atmosphere even now.
Yes. And if you would, all these efforts to lower the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, if we would lower it to half, all the plants would start to die. Fun fact that no one knows. And I only know it because I have seen a video last year, I think, from a discussion in the American Senate. Very interesting. I didn't know that. And for example, Venus has a carbon dioxide percentage in the atmosphere. I think it's let's go with CO2 in the atmosphere of 95-ish%. The planet is hot as hell, right? It's super hot. Now Earth has less than 1%. The climate here is, well, nice. Mars, cold as hell. How much CO2 does that atmosphere has? Basically the same as Venus. So just percentage-wise, CO2 in the atmosphere doesn't matter when it comes to how warm a planet is. Because Mars and Venus are about the same. One is hot as hell, the other one cold as a single mother's ass. Why? Because it doesn't matter. CO2 doesn't matter. Has zero effect.
Now, you've come under massive attack, of course, Steve Koonin. I mean, environmental groups are even suing to censor the report. You've got media outlets of the left demonising you, running so-called fact checks. I've had a look at a few and they're not persuasive. Some climate scientists are abusing you, claiming, the group of you are just hand-picked skeptics, even though you used to be with the Obama administration. Have there been any criticism?
Yeah, but that's typical for the left. They attack everyone, even the people that were on their side, or even people that are on their side right now, because they are a cult. They are completely brainwashed retards. It's that simple. I mean, I believed in man-made climate change completely. And then I learned more and more about it. And, the moment you understand some things, other things make no sense. Like, why are we preserving water in toilets in Germany? We have rain all the time. Well, all the time. We never have actually, oh my God, there is no water. Now, the farmers have that problem sometimes when there's a 1 month heat wave without rain, sure. But that's not the populace. We still have water. Even if the water is low in the rivers, there's still water. I've never seen a river running dry in Germany. Ever. I'm almost 43 years old. Soon, this month. And I have seen droughts, I have seen floods. I remember when I was a kid, the Rhine was flooding every year. Why? Because all the snow in the mountains would melt. And then you would have floods. That was completely normal. And it would still be if there would be more snow in the mountains. But there isn't. If that comes back, then we will have, more floods again. That's just nature. But I also remember that back in the 90s, the Rhine would freeze. By the way, for the ones who don't know, the Rhine is the biggest shippable river in Germany. It's actually really important for the industry, which is dying, but that's not the point here. And I remember it was in winter, it was so cold that the Rhine would freeze. Doesn't happen anymore. But I also know 200 years ago, the Rhine would completely freeze so deeply that literally in Cologne, they had the Christmas market on the ice of the Rhine, like on the Rhine, on the river. No, that didn't happen for, I don't know how many hundreds of years. I mean, almost 200, of course. But, and that's just how it is. And also, 200 years ago, there was snow in the summer. You had years without harvest because it was that cold. So you don't want it as cold as it was directly before the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, because it was so cold that you had years without harvest. What would the vegans eat? Nothing, because there is nothing. They would just die. Now, some people would say good riddance, but you have to be careful. But yeah, if there's no food growing, what do people eat? Nothing. And that's what happens if it's too cold. There's no food growing. Very, very simple.
Of your report that you think, yep, that's fair enough, we've goofed here, or we haven't taken this into consideration? Any criticism you think you should take on the chin?
Well, we've seen one already that, we made basically a typographical error in one of the footnotes. And we have acknowledged that to the person who pointed it out. And of course, we will fix it. But, we're refraining right now from looking in detail at the criticisms till they come in the next couple of weeks through the public portal. And then, as we have promised, we will deal with every serious criticism seriously. And like good scientists, we will modify the report as might be warranted from those criticisms.
Steve Koonin, you've been fighting the alarmism for some time now. This is, I think, your weightiest blow against the scaremongering. So congratulations and thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.